Hello, Canucks fans, and happy Canada Day. Happy Free Agency Day. NHL Free Agency. Day one, the Canucks were active, and we're going to talk about it. I'm hosting solo right now, but I'm going to have some friends, some special guests dropping throughout the show. So make sure you stick around. We're going to break down everything that the Canucks did, everything that we think they might still do, and review all the moves that they made today. But first, I have to tell you that today's episode of Canucks Conversation is brought to you by Zephyr Epic. Join Zephyr Epic for a fun-filled trading event celebrating CONMEBOL Copa America 2024. There'll be prizes, food, giveaways, and of course, epic trades. So get ready to complete your CONMEBOL Copa America USA 2024 official Panini sticker collection at Zephyr Epic. Copa America 2024 runs from June 20th to July 14th and is a great opportunity to meet fellow soccer enthusiasts, exchange stickers, and enjoy the vibrant community here in Greater Vancouver. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just starting out, this event is perfect for collectors of all ages, so bring your duplicates, meet fellow enthusiasts, and complete your collection. Don't miss out on this exciting opportunity to add those missing stickers to your album. Be sure to reserve your ticket on Eventbrite to secure a chance to win 2 tickets to the Whitecaps' first Wrexham game. Winners will be announced July 10th, and you can find the Eventbrite link in our YouTube and podcast description. This event is on July 6th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Zephyr Epic retail store at 8065 130th Street in Surrey. Massive shout out to Zephyr Epic. Very happy to have them on board. Update for you. People are wondering who's going to join. We've got Cody Sievertson who's going to join. He's coming in and he's going to give us a few different takes on a few different things. Harmon Dial, as seen on TV, just texted me and said he's wrapping up his final TSN hit of the day. He was a fixture on their free agent frenzy. He did a phenomenal job. Going to be nice to get Harmon back. Regular co-host of this show is going to join me, but I'm going to have Cody join in a matter of moments. Cody had some takes on the goalie that was signed, which I'm excited to talk about, of course, but some big news. The big news of the day is that Jake Debrusk has signed a 7-year deal with the Vancouver Canucks at a cap hit annual average value of $5.5 million. Chat, I'm curious what you all think. People in the YouTube live chat here, we want your interaction. I see a lot of regular listeners of the show in there right now talking about the signing, but this is the top 6 winger that the Canucks go out and get. Obviously, Jake Guentzel was off the books. He goes to Tampa Bay, and then the other options, you didn't love them nearly as much as you like Jake Guentzel. I really think Jake Debrusk is a solid plan B for the Canucks to bring him in. A top 6 scoring winger with a well-rounded offensive game and good defensive metrics. That's how he was described by JFresh over on Twitter. This is a guy that's going to kill penalties. He's going to play on the power play. He's going to play in all situations. And really, it's not just okay, if it works out with Elias Patterson, that's great. If it doesn't, it's not going to work out. Could you imagine this guy next to JT Miller? I think he's going to be great next to Elias Pettersson, but if it doesn't work out with Pettersson, similar to how it didn't work out with Elias Lindholm and Elias Pettersson, for whatever reason, you've always got the option of putting Jake Debrusk with really whoever, and he's going to play in the top 6. He scored 27 goals twice in his career, most recently 2 seasons ago. I'm really excited to see what Jake Debrusk does in a Canucks uniform. And again, I bring up the power play because you talk about working out in all situations, the penalty kill. On the power play, this is a guy that's going to fit in probably in that bumper spot. He said today in his media avail that he's really comfortable at the net front spot. So you've got those 2 options for him. There was a lot of, I guess, changes throughout the Canucks power play this year when it came to who is in those spots, right? Like you tried Brock Besser in the bumper. You tried Brock Besser at the net front, kind of behind the goal line type position. They've tried both those looks, but we know that it's really, really advantageous if they can have a left shot there because it opens up the shooting opportunity for JT Miller coming down the left half wall to slide the puck into the middle. And again, that's where Bo Horvat did a lot of his work, was in that bumper spot. So I'm really curious what we see with Jake Debrusk when it comes to the Canucks power play. I think he's a good fit. I think he's a really good fit. Nathan in the Twitter live chat said, thought the Canucks had a pretty clean day. Thanks for the content quads. Nathan, thank you for listening. A lot of people in the chat talking about the signings, and we're going to get to all of them. Like I said, Cody Sievertson is going to join me. Jeff Patterson just texted me and said he's available. So let's get a co-host in here. I thought Cody was going to join. I'm not sure if he's here yet because I can't see anything on the behind the scenes stuff, but there he is. There he is. Cody Sievertson joins me now. Cody, thanks so much for joining. Just your thoughts on Jake Debrusk, because that's where we're starting. Oh, we don't have Cody. We don't have Cody on good Wi-Fi. Okay, we're gonna get back to Cody. We'll go back to Cody after. We can't hear Cody or see him, so it's okay. We'll go to Cody in a second here. But hold on, I'm just trying to figure out. Sorry, folks, on the fly. This is how we do things sometimes. But it was gonna be a busy show with a bunch of different people joining. So I'm gonna try to get someone in here. But people talking about the Debrusk chat. Let's get to that. RD45 in the chat said Debrusk fits the Tocchet structure so well. I wasn't sold on it. This is from K-Town Chef. I wasn't sold on this at first, but I did a little digging. I like the Corsi numbers. He's an all situation player and still some upside left, I think. And that's the thing is this is a player who wasn't super happy with his role in Boston, and people are already throwing out the Zach Hyman comparable. It's a very similar contract, obviously, to what Zach Hyman got in Edmonton, but I also saw some people throwing out the JT Miller thing, right? Like JT Miller came from an environment in Tampa where he wasn't super happy. He gets an increased role with the Canucks and he just flies. So I'm really curious what ends up happening here with Jake Debrusk. I think it's a really good signing. I really do. I really like that contract. Again, there was reports as well that he was offered more money, less years elsewhere. This is a guy who's still only 27 years old, folks. You look at all the money that was handed out to guys on the wrong side of 30, guys approaching 30, right? And we're going to get to contracts that were given out to like Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov. Those are coming up later in the show. But the Canucks get their signings done with these guys that are still under 30, decent age. I like the fact that he's only 27 years old. And again, 7 years, $5.5 million for Jake Debrusk. That feels like a cap hit that you can work around. And there he is. Cody Severson.
Hello.
Joins now. Cody, your thoughts on the Jake Debrusk signing?
It's aging much better over time as the day continues, and more people get signed to atrocious deals. At first, I was kind of like, this seems really bad. And then you see some of the other like wingers, like you see the Lamborghini get $2 million for 2 years, and you're like, oh, actually, Debrusk seems all right. That's like
Sam Lafferty. Sam Lafferty, 2 years, $2 million in Buffalo as well. I'm imagining that Chicago traded for Sam Lafferty, and then when they went to the negotiation, they're like, we don't want this guy. Never mind. Okay, you can go to free agency.
It's like they immediately traded for him, and they were like, wait, this is a terrible idea. Never mind. Oops.
That's how it feels. And we're going to get to those signings. We're going to get to the ones of the departing Canucks as well.
Yeah.
We're going to have a lot of guests on this show, but Cody, one guy I wanted to ask you about was the goalie they signed, because we heard that they were going to be in the market for a goaltender. And I don't know how much you want to read into it of who they went out and got, but they go get Jiri Patera from the Vegas Golden Knights. Most recently, you saw him a lot with the Henderson Silver Knights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quads. I don't like this signing. I love this signing. He was in a terrible environment throughout his entire like Henderson career. I did some research, some Patera research, if you will.
I like it.
Okay, so the shots against per game, always over 30 during Patera's AHL career. Henderson was consistently one of the worst PKs, like below average every single season, all three. He I don't know, he had like a 903 last year, which like, you stare at it and you're like, that's not great. But then you see his work in the NHL too, and you're like, oh, it's sub 900. That's not great either. And then you look at the games he played against, and it's like Carolina, Tampa, Florida, all teams that like registered 35 shots or more against him. Like you couldn't have asked for like a worse environment for like a guy to come in and just like steal you games when you can. I think he had like a 1-6 record, which like, so for all the people being like, this sucks, like just go with Seelovs, he's ready. It's like, probably not. That's why they went for a guy who's a couple years older. He's, got 2 years of term, which is interesting because that probably locks in another year of Seelovs in the AHL where he can work on being able to stop point shots because he's pretty bad at that. If you hadn't noticed during playoffs, it's his biggest weakness was being able to stop a shot from the blue line. So I imagine in their mind, they're like, Patera is good with a big workload, a heavy workload in terms of shot volume. They're confident that their defensive group is going to deny shot volume so that he won't have much to work with. And if that happens, maybe he gives them a lot more saves in a backup role. It's cheap enough. It's a decent bet in case Seelovs isn't ready or able to steal the net, which he won't because he's the worst, as Quad says to me in private.
Don't even joke about Sheetlove slander. But in all seriousness, like looking at this, I think you're right, Cody. Like I think probably this is your NHL backup next year. But
Hmm.
if anything, it just adds kind of this level of, I guess, pressure or motivation for both Sheelovs and Nikita Tolopilo, because it's competition for Sheelovs for the NHL backup job, obviously, but down in Abbott's for Tolopilo, now
Mhm.
it's wrestling for starts. Like this guy's here for 2 years. He's on a 2-way contract, so he's probably going to play in Abbotsford. But it's going to be pressure. It's not just an automatic, okay, well, Sheelovs is the backup and that's how it's going to be. But it's also not like a Laurent Brossoit where you're like, no, now this is definitely keeping Sheelovs in
Right.
the AHL. They have the option of putting Patera down in the AHL. So we'll
Mhm.
see what it happens. And again, obviously 2-way contract has nothing to do with waiver
Yeah.
eligibility. We always have to go out and say that,
Yeah.
but I'm talking in terms of the fact that he agreed to a contract where he's paid a different salary if he's put in the AHL. It does tell me some stuff about
Yeah.
how they're kind of viewing this, how he's viewing his role in the Canucks organization as well. It's an
Mhm.
interesting signing. It's an interesting signing, and honestly, I like him for the reasons that you just pointed out. I think there's obviously steps in his game. He's still young enough that I feel like he can be molded by Ian Clark, Marco Terenius. I feel like there's a chance he can kind of turn into something for them. So
Mhm.
I really do like the signing, and I don't like that it was a guy like Laurent Brossoit, some like a veteran NHL backup that's for sure keeping Sheelovs
Right.
in the A.
The team also loves to do this. They love to run like a trifecta of guys who are kind of on the cusp of breaking out. Like they did that with Martin, with Delia, like guys that are, reliable or capable of maybe stealing the job, but they want that internal competition. They had, Lemieux signed this year too. They were trying to get Sawchenko back, so obviously they want that internal competition in the AHL to have a guy kind of steal the backup position. They're obviously probably banking on Demko coming back and still playing 50 games, which
Yep.
I don't know what your mileage is on that. I don't think it's a good idea. So it is a bit risky, but like I do like the swing on the upside.
Yeah, exactly. And you have Sheelovs. Like you still have Sheelovs, who
Yeah.
I thought, like I was saying, might be able to push that 30, 40 game mark next year. But now just in case he doesn't, now you've got Patera as well. One of these guys is going to be able to get you some solid goaltending out of Sheelovs, Tolopilo, and Patera. I keep forgetting his name. But anyways,
Yeah.
one of those guys is going to be able to get you those starts. So anyways, yeah, thanks so much for joining me, Cody. Going to be
Of
joined
course.
by Jeff and then Harman as well. So yeah, Cody, thanks so much for joining me on short notice.
Thanks for having me, pal. Have a good show.
Thank you. There he is, Cody Sievertson, joining the show. People in the YouTube live chat, I love it. We got a lot of interaction. And as seen on TV, Harmon Dial joins me now, the regular co-host of Canucks Conversation. Harm, how was your day today?
It was good. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, which I can't remember if I've done that in years, but honestly, it was nice and peaceful to start the day really early, get to the rink by 6:30 and just track all the madness of free agency.
Where'd you get that suit? Is that a new suit? Did TSN send it to you? How did that work?
It's a funny story. I was on a trip on the Canucks West Coast trip in early March or early April. I want to say early March, I believe. And they needed me or not TSN, Sportsnet wanted me to do an intermission panel with Murph, and I realized I hadn't packed a suit. I just packed just some overcoats and dress shirts, but I didn't have an actual suit. So I went down to Vegas, and the day before just bought a suit, which worked out well because I needed to bring one home anyway, because my collection's a little short. So it's pretty new, but I didn't get it specifically for today.
Oh, I like the pocket square. People are pointing out the pocket square. Big fans of the pocket square. Here in the Canucks Army, Canucks Conversation, YouTube live chat. Okay, Harm, lots of stuff happened today. I know I only got you for like 15, 20 minutes. You just let me know when you got to go. Jeff's going to join us soon too, so we'll get his thoughts on it. I'll bring Jeff in when you're done, I think. But your thoughts on the Jake Debrusk signing, we'll start there.
Yeah, he brings speed. Honestly, after you struck out from the top names, right? Guentzel, Marchessault went elsewhere. You weren't really in on the bidding on Stamkos. It's reasonable relative to the other options. Like, I would much rather be the Canucks betting on Jake Debrusk than the contract that Seattle gave Chandler Stevenson, for example. Debrusk is younger. I think he's a better play driver. He is a perfect fit also for the way the Canucks want to play, right? Straight lines, north-south, defensively responsible, has developed into a penalty killer over the last couple of seasons. And I think that he has the potential to be a consistent 25 goal scorer for you, especially if he's playing in a regular top six role next to Elias Pettersson. I think a lot of people will look at his offensive numbers this year, 19 goals and 40 points, and it looks pretty modest. But the thing to keep in mind is that he was playing through a broken hand in the second half of the season when his offensive production fell off. Now, that healed by the time the playoffs started, and you saw what type of impact difference maker he could be, where he led the Bruins with 5 goals and 11 points in 13 playoff games. So I really like the on ice fit. And is it a long term that you've handed out here in 7 years? Absolutely, there is some risk there, but he's also on the younger end of free agents at 27. It's not like you gave a 31-year-old 7 years.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about, of the plan Bs that the Canucks could have had, because obviously they lost out on Jake Guentzel. Was Jake Debrusk the best fit, especially when you look at what the other people signed for today?
100%, I'd say so. Again, stylistically, he's going to be a fit. Systems wise, he's going to be a fit. Also defensively, like, this is the part that a lot of people talk about DeBrusk as this inconsistent guy, and sometimes he's on, sometimes he's off. And yeah, that was maybe the case earlier in his career, but he's really ironed that out, I think, the last 2 or 3 seasons in Boston. But also, you at least know that even if he's, let's say, in a stretch where he isn't producing a lot of offense, you're not worried about him as a liability. He's still going to do things away from the puck, whether it's on the forecheck, whether it's holding on to pucks down low, giving you some edge and bite, killing penalties. He's going to be able to contribute in other ways. So as long as DeBrusk and Patterson find chemistry, like, that's just the biggest X factor that you can't predict is this winger going to find chemistry with this centerman? I think he'll find some level of chemistry within the Canucks top 6, but that's really the only question mark that I have.
Okay, they also signed your boy. I was so happy when they made this signing because I knew you'd be very excited about it, and that we could talk a lot about it. The Canucks bring home Danton Heinen, who Patrick Allvin said moments ago took a hometown discount to come play for his hometown, 2 years at $2.25 million. Harmon, when you see that Sam Lafferty got a 2x2 in Buffalo and some of the other contracts that were handed out today, not to pick on Sam Lafferty, this Danton Heinen contract is a bit of a steal for the Canucks, it feels like.
Yeah, he's miles better than Sam Lafferty, and honestly, I could envision him playing a similar role as Pia Suter, where Suter can play up and down your lineup. He's not going to be a dynamic play driver. You're not asking him to carry the mail offensively, but he can be a third wheel on a line, plus hold his own defensively, which I think matters a lot in terms of flexibility come playoff time. If you run into injuries, can you elevate a guy from the bottom 6 to play in a top 6 role, and he can at least hold his own? You can count on Heinen for that. And this past year, he scored 17 goals and 36 points as well. So you're getting some secondary offensive pop from him as well.
Okay, Kiefer Sherwood. That's the next contract that they hand out on the day. Another bottom 6 forward. Hughes said everyone on the team hated him during the playoffs. That was what Patrick Allvin shared during his media availability. They signed Kiefer Sherwood to a 2-year contract at $1.5 million.
I love it. I think this is an interesting, maybe even upside bet on Sherwood because he is a late bloomer. He hasn't had a ton of consistent reps in the NHL as a full-time player before this past season. And you may look at the numbers and go 10 goals and 27 points. That's pretty modest. And I think it was 68 games maybe. But the thing you have to keep in mind is, he got basically no power play time, which Patrick Allvin name-checked twice as, hey, with his shot, we think he could help the second unit. But also, if you're getting that production from your fourth line winger, that's significant in terms of secondary contribution. So I like Sherwood. He's pesky. He's got some pace. He wins battles. He's a pain in the ass to play against, and he really caught my eye in the Nashville series as a guy that you can plug in on your fourth line, but maybe has an upside to be a little bit more. If I know he's 29, but sometimes these guys do pop late.
Yeah, I think he fits the profile. He already is a late bloomer, and I really did like this signing as well. Okay, moving on here to Derek Forbort, 1-year deal at $1.5 million. Harm, the immediate thing that I think of, and we're going to get to it during the departing Canucks segment, is that Ian Cole put up similar metrics, it feels like. He's older, and he got a year for $3.1 million in Utah. So I like this signing for the Canucks. I feel like this is just a cheaper, younger version of Ian Cole.
Absolutely. He is a penalty killing specialist. That's how a lot of people talked about him in Boston, because it isn't just that a lot of times we say, oh, this guy can kill penalties. And while that's true, there's a big difference between this guy can kill penalties and this guy is a high-end penalty killer on ability. Derek Forbort isn't just he can kill penalties. He is high-end on ability. He logged a ton of minutes, averaged 3 minutes per game on the PK for the Bruins. And if you look at Boston, year in, year out, they have been one of the top-ranked penalty-killing teams in the NHL. Now, at 5-on-5, I still think he's defensively responsible. He has been a little bit turnover-prone. So at 5-on-5, you're going to have to be you're going to have to iron that out and make sure that he is managing the puck correctly. I think the other concern might be durability, because he played less than 40 games this past season because of injuries. But on ability and at that price point, to bring in a guy that is 6'4", is going to win battles, fits that Tocchet style defense that they want on a bottom pair. I like what he can bring on the penalty kill and in logging minutes as a number 60 man.
You brought up size, Harm. You brought up size, which means it's now time to talk about the final signing of the day, we think. I don't think there's been anything else since we started. The final signing of the day, Canucks signing Vincent Desharnais to a 2-year deal at $2 million annually. Now, another penalty killing specialist, right shot defenseman, 6'7". Sure, you'd think owner quads would be all over this. And this is what the conversation I was having with our producer, Jacob Lazar, off air right before we went, is I like Desharnais in a vacuum. I think if you're signing Desharnais to be your 6'7" defenseman, play on a bottom pair, then it's fine. Like, it's fine if that's what you're signing him to do, and then you have a guy in your top 4 that you really like, and it's very clear that he's going to be your third pair guy. But Harmon, I think the conversations you and I have been having is kind of that, well, Tyler Myers is probably better fitted as a bottom pairing defenseman. And right now, he's in your top 4. Like, you need Tyler Myers to play like a top 4 defenseman. So that's maybe the only reason I don't love the Desharnais signing, is because I was thinking they were going to use what cap space they had left to go out and try and find someone to play in that top 4, maybe execute a trade, something like that. But they instead signed Vincent Desharnais, and nothing's finalized yet. Like, I'm not saying that they can't go out and go find someone else to also help on defense on the right side. But as constructed right now, just not 100% sure I love the signing of Vincent Desharnais.
So Desharnais is really interesting because in 2022-23, I watched him play and went, yeah, he's rugged. Yeah, he can kill penalties, but his puck skills are abysmal. He was a liability during the 2023 playoffs. Just too many turnovers, couldn't make poised decisions. Last season, I saw a massive improvement for him with those puck skills, with that decision making. Where, look, he's never going to be an above average puck mover or even an average one, but he was at least competent and took massive strides. And okay, you're at least not a liability with the puck, which, given now your size and penalty killing, defensive acumen, you're really interesting to me as a number 6 defenseman. So I like Desharnais a lot as a number 6 D-man. I think he's definitely an upgrade on Noah Juulsen, but the way this blue line is constructed right now, if you play Quinn Hughes and Filip Hronek, I don't love the way the bottom 4 is structured right now, in the sense that I think they lack some speed and they lack puck moving, right? A Forbort Desharnais third pair, are they going to be able to move the puck effectively enough? I worry about that a little bit. And like you mentioned, you're still leaning on Tyler Myers in a top 4 role as well. So I have some question marks, not about Desharnais in a vacuum, but about the bottom 4 as a whole. And in having said that, I'm sure the Canucks feel, hey, we've still got cap space, and we made the Nikita Zadorov trade in season, that if we do feel we have a need for more puck moving help within our second and third pairs, that we can go and get that guy at some point, whether it's later in the offseason or perhaps even at the deadline. But I guess the point I'm trying to make isn't so much about Desharnais. It's about the way the blue line is constructed as a whole, where I worry a little bit about the lack of speed and puck moving.
That's the thought I've had too, Harm. and I'm just thinking about all the moves the Canucks made today. It feels like they took a big step when it comes to addressing their forward group, their lack of production, their play in transition and everything like that. But it feels like they took a bit of a step back on defense. Again, the offseason's far from over. So you look at it and you say, like you just said as well, they can make trades in season if they have to. There's still time left. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes down as we now start to get set for training camp after some time off, of course. But it feels like that forward group is a hell of a lot better, and the defense group is slightly worse than I think we would have expected.
Yeah, and just to circle back on Desharnais, I think the reason they were excited about this opportunity is it seems like they really believe he has upside. I spoke about the year-over-year progression and how much of a significant improvement it was from this season. And look, he was scratched at points in the conference final and Stanley Cup final, but he was unbelievable in the regular season as far as I was concerned on that third pair. Not to mention in the playoffs as well. Looking at his underlying numbers, it looks as if he was a bit of a victim of a bad PEO luck as well. So I'm not too concerned about him sitting out in the playoffs as for Broberg to come into the lineup. But Alvin specifically mentioned that they're excited about the possibility of him working with Adam Foote and Sergei Gonchar, and if they could get Noah Juleson to go from an AHL defenseman to, okay, you're a competent number 7, then can you turn Desharnais from a number 6 to even a number 5? That doesn't solve your blue line in terms of making it necessarily better, but I think that's part of the reason why they were willing to pay a bit of a premium, because I do think right now $2 million is a little bit rich for Desharnais. I would have liked him closer to $1.5 million, but clearly the reason they felt an urgency to go after him, even though they went out and addressed some of their size and penalty killing concerns with the Derek Forbort signing, was because they feel that they can turn him into something more than he is right now.
All right, Harm, I know you got to go. So anything else that you want to say about the Canucks free agency as a whole?
I'm really fascinated to see how the goaltending battle will shake out come training camp. I'm not too familiar with the goaltender that they signed. I'm not a goalie expert, but just talking to people around the rink, it seems like they believe he can give Shilov's legitimate competition for the backup job, and I think it helps to add another goaltender that may have some upside.
Yeah, and we'll be doing shows all this week, so you'll be back with me tomorrow. We'll break all this down and we'll have the goalie conversation. Trust me. We'll talk about the goaltending situation. Harm, thanks so much for joining me, man. Much appreciated, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, boys.
There he is, Harmon Dial, regular co-host of Canucks Conversation. Okay, let's get to our poll question, which, as always, is brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Our poll question, we kept it pretty simple, folks. We were asking you, and I put this out right before the Vincent Desharnais signing, but I feel like the answers that we got will still kind of be impacted because the signing happened right after the signing came down. So the question was, how do you feel about the Canucks' work on day one of free agency? 63.9% say they like it. 17.4% say they love it. 16.6% say meh, and only 2% of Canucks fans voting in our poll today said they were not happy with the Canucks work on day one of free agency. You got a Debrusk signing, you've got some sharp signings in Danton Heinen, Kiefer Sherwood, and then some other signings as well. So how did you feel about today's pod with free agency? Okay, that was our poll question, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the sport, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. It must be 19 plus to play. All right, let's bring him in. Jeff Patterson is brought to you by our friends at Four Winds Brewing, more specifically the Four Winds IPA, a bitter beer for the sweetest coast. This classic IPA was made for folks who want a hoppy beer, hitting major keynotes of citrus and flower while finishing with a mellow hoppy flourish. This is an IPA for IPA lovers. Available now at liquor stores across the province or for home delivery through the Four Winds online shop at fourwindsbrewing.ca. Locally owned and operated in Delta. Okay, and there's Jeff Patterson. Jeff, I got to tell you, I didn't say this on the first show that we did, but people were pointing out in the chat. We didn't even address it. I am loving the facial hair.
This might be the longest I have ever let a beard grow in my life. At this stage of my life, didn't want to miss out. So, you got to strike. I went a few days. It was sort of that downtime between the end of the season and knowing that I didn't have to leave the house an awful lot. So I could sort of just grow the beard in private. And if it wasn't working, get rid of it. But decided to keep her going here. So we're a couple weeks in and we'll see if it's got staying power.
As we've determined, I need about 4 or 5 months to go through that phase of not having people see me while it's grown out. So I hope it's here to stay, Jeff. I hope it's here to stay. Okay, let's get to the Canucks free agent signing today. Harmon and I just broke them all down, but I'll just ask you, as a whole, the Canucks work on free agency. We're still going to talk about the departing Canucks, but of the players they signed, just what did you think of their free agency period?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite parts of the day was the first 15 minutes of free agency when the frenzy was truly on and the Canucks were not involved. And there's always that angst in the market that, here are the Canucks again, missing out, striking out. If you don't know Patrick Allvin by this point, pretty shrewd operator, likes to maneuver in the cone of silence, doesn't like things to get out. So really the Canucks, I mean, yes, we knew that they were going to take a swing at Jake Guentzel if he had made it to market. He didn't. But beyond that, nobody really knew what their plan B was. And there was that next group, and Jake Debrusk was certainly among them. We knew they needed scoring help. But when you looked at who was available, Teuvo Teravainen, Jason Zucker, Arvidsson, Tyler Toffoli, I suppose. I think in a lot of ways, it's a good bet on one of the youngest guys in this free agent crop at 27, maybe 28 in season. But you're looking at Jake Debrusk. There's every reason to believe that his best hockey is still in front of him, that he can be productive over the bulk of the contract. There's a risk in going full term at 7 years, but goal scorers get paid in the National Hockey League, Dave. And, if this guy can be a 25 to 30 goal scorer, $5.5 million, I have no issues with that kind of money in a world in which the salary cap is going up. Now, can he be 25 to 30? He has been a 27 goal scorer in the National Hockey League. But I think the opportunity is there. Patrick Allvin basically said, in his world, he said it's up to Rick Tocchet, but in his world, he sees this as a signing for Elias Pettersson's wing. So, I think that's one of the things that attracted DeBrusk to Vancouver, the opportunity to play high in the lineup with a guy who I have to think that Elias Pettersson's going to take this summer to do a little soul searching and come back devoted and ready to regain his form. And if he does, then DeBrusk's setting himself up for what should be a pretty good run of not just next season, but the foreseeable future. And it's not just the goal scoring. Did the Canucks need goal scoring help on the wings? Absolutely. But DeBrusk's a pretty well-rounded player, adds penalty killing utility. And I think that, nobody knows anything about the DeBrusk family and the bloodlines. And, Louis certainly played the game differently than his son, but he was a teammate of Rick Tocchet's. I think Rick Tocchet's going to be able to get to Jake Debrusk and bring out the best in him. And I think it's important, too. And Patrick Allvin was asked about the idea that the Canucks brought in 3 guys from the Bruins, while 2 left and went to Boston. And what did that say? And he talked about the fact that, over the last decade, the Boston Bruins have been one of the model franchises in the National Hockey League. I know people in Vancouver don't want to hear that, but just in terms of coaching, Bruce Cassidy was there. He left. In came Jim Montgomery. Jake Debrusk has worked under some really good quality head coaches in a system that has continually produced success and been surrounded by really good players. And don't discount that. I think this is a guy that's been well trained at the National Hockey League level, and hopefully that is transferable as he makes the jump here to Vancouver.
And the rest of their signings as well. It felt like, obviously, DeBrusk, that if that's your big fish, that's your big fish. And I think you have to be happy with that if you're a Canucks fan. That's the best plan B. I think if you can't get Jake Guentzel, Jake Debrusk was probably the second best option, especially when you consider the cap hit that they got him at as well. The rest of their signings, Jeff, seemed like some pretty sharp additions, like Danton Heinen. And I was looking at people's created cap-friendly lineups and everything at Danton Heinen in the bottom 6. Don't discount Danton Heinen's ability to maybe play as a top 6 winger. Harmon gave him the Pius Suter comparable. I think the Canucks got a lot better up front with these signings today.
Well, it's funny. Heinen's been linked to the Canucks forever. I mean, I think at one time there was talk about a straight up trade with Anaheim for Jake Virtanen. That obviously didn't happen, but there were times when he was a free agent. You wondered if he was going to come back home. Langley guy, here he is. And so, he's got utility. There's no question. I think he's got flexibility and versatility. He can play both wings. It was funny because I wrote a piece at Canucks Army at some point in June about, if all these free agents leave. Now, they didn't ultimately. I mean, a few of them did, but I was looking at it through a penalty killing lens and looking at possible unrestricted free agents that had an ability to come and kill penalties. Danton Heinen and Derek Forbort were two guys that I listed in my piece at Canucks Army, because the Bruins were the 7th best penalty killing team in the National Hockey League. It goes back to this idea of well coached, well structured. These guys learn the right habits, and now they come here. And so, yeah, I mean, Patrick Allvin talked about the need for speed when he held his exit meeting back in whenever that was, May. And he mentioned it again today. He thinks that they upgraded in terms of scoring, but also he thinks they're a faster team, and not just Danton Heinen, but Kiefer Sherwood as well. Forbort, not so much. Forbort is your classic stay-at-home defenseman. He admitted as much when he met with the Vancouver media, said, I'm a pretty simple guy, know my role, try to play it, be physical. And look, he'll fit in with what Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote are looking for on the back end here. But yeah, I like the idea of Heinen. When I look at the Canucks depth chart, Dave, if I go Patterson, Debrusk, and let's just use Nils Höglander there as the other line mate, I still think they're in a position of Miller, Besser, and last year it was Pia Suter, and Suter played a role on that line, but I thought there was still an opportunity maybe to grab another scoring winger here in free agency. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, at least in the here and now. Now, maybe later in the summer, we'll see how things shake down closer to the season. But, is Danton Heinen, I don't see him being brought in as a top 6 guy necessarily, but that's, his speed. Maybe he winds up and is given an opportunity there. If not, then, Pia Suter is sort of the fallback, I suppose. You know what you've got, and the underlying numbers were really strong when he played with Miller and Besser. So we'll see what happens. As for Kiefer Sherwood, and I heard Harm talking about it, and I was the same boat. Like, I knew of him, and I could see his counting stats. But watching him night in, night out in that series against the Canucks, and being in Nashville and getting a chance to watch him in person, just an absolute wrecking ball, thorn in the side, never passed up an opportunity to make a hit. Patrick Allvin came with jokes today and talked about how he talked to Quinn Hughes, and Quinn Hughes was delighted that they got Kiefer Sherwood because he hated playing against him. I get it. This guy was 15th in the NHL in hits. Dakota Joshua was in the top 10. So now you've got 2 of the top 15 guys in terms of the number of hits laid last season. A guy that I think, again, will play Rick Tocchet's style, and maybe even, Tocchet may find ways to level him up even further. I'm not so sure that I agree with Allvin talking about power play opportunities. And that's, in my world, that's not why they signed Kiefer Sherwood. And if he doesn't play a second on the power play, I still think that this guy can provide value to the Vancouver Canucks with his speed, his tenacity, the fact that he's got that, factor that they kind of were lacking. That, they've got guys that played lower in the lineup, but they didn't have a lot of guys that were out there looking to cause trouble. And I think Kiefer Sherwood brings an element of that, won't back down. And the way Andrew Brunette used him in his 4th line in that series against, he wasn't afraid to match them up against top lines on the Canucks. This is a guy that can hold his own defensively, but turn him loose. He can be a little bit of a wrecking ball. And I think he's going to be a fan favorite and the kind of player, that's an element that I think the hockey club was missing a little bit. So I think that was a welcome addition. And when you compare it to the price point that Sam Lafferty got 2x2 in Buffalo, they're bringing him in at $1.5 million for 2. So I think he certainly can fill the Sam Lafferty role and be even, considerably tougher to play against.
Couple things here, Jeff. The first thing, every signing the Canucks made today made them a tougher team than they were this morning. Second, we were talking about that hole, that vacancy, if you will, on the line with JT Miller and Brock Besser. You just said it. Kiefer Sherwood's played against top competition before. If Phil DiGiuseppe found himself in that spot in training camp and through the start of the season as well, and Sam Lafferty was a top 6 forward on this team, it feels like the Canucks are going to have opportunities for these guys to go out and take a spot like that. Like a guy like Kiefer Sherwood is probably going to get at least a look with JT Miller and Brock Besser instead of just being exclusively on the 4th line. Danton Heinen obviously is probably a little bit better suited for that role than Kiefer Sherwood, but you're talking about a guy that hits everything that moves, a guy that forechecks very hard, can play defensively really well. I'm really intrigued by all these signings they made today, especially when it comes to the forward group. I just think they got so much better when it comes to that forward group and their play in transition. I don't think we're going to be in a similar position with the conversations we're having about this team next year, where we're saying, oh my gosh, like, who could they possibly put? Let's see what Linus Karlsson can do on Elias Pettersson's wing. Like, we're probably not going to have to see that next year.
Right, and lower in the lineup too with a guy like Nils Zaman, and to with all due respect to Nils Zaman, who's trying to carve out a career as a National Hockey Leaguer, but there were a lot of nights where you asked, like, what exactly is it that you bring to the mix here? And there's never a question about that with Kiefer Sherwood. I mean, this is a guy that, and he talked about it when he met the media on his Zoom. He understands his role now. He's 29. It's taken a little while. He's bounced around. Nothing's coming easy to him, but he said, like, I don't take a day in the NHL for granted. Like, I need to prove myself on a regular basis. And again, he just brings some intangibles that were missing from this group. So wherever they use him in the lineup, I don't want to see him a whole lot higher in the lineup, but if he earns an opportunity, you're right. Like a guy like Phil DiGiuseppe had a strong training camp and got a shot there. It didn't work out necessarily. And now guys like DiGiuseppe and Vasily Podkolzin, you bring in depth players and the bar goes up here, and it's all about trying to make this organization better. And I think it's interesting too, like, for the last decade, essentially on free agent day, we know that they've spent bad money and just kind of brought in guys to fill roles and veteran experience and the super premium for Jay Beagle and his championship pedigree. This is a team that made the playoffs, got to the second round, got to game 7 of the second round. That's the hopping on point now. And so I think it was with that in mind that Patrick Relvin made the moves that he brought in here. What were they lacking in the playoffs? A little bit of offense, obviously, or maybe a lot of offense. So Debrusk, to a lesser degree, Heinen, they addressed that. Sherwood brings some speed and the sandpaper and the grit and all those types of things. I like those. You talk about transition. Transition can mean a lot of things in hockey. And we saw, like, with the size and the reach and the length of Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers, and now you bring in Vinny Desharnais. One of the things that big guys do well is disrupt at the blue line, turn pucks over there, and that's one way you can go to transition. If pucks are dumped into your own zone, that's where I start to get a little bit concerned, because outside of Hughes and Hronek, there is not a puck mover in the bunch. And sometimes with tall guys, that extra stride, it takes a little bit longer for them to get the puck, do what they want to do with it. I am concerned. I will say that. I'm not going to lose sleep tonight or tomorrow. It's the middle of summer. Again, players may shake free. This management has shown a penchant to make trades, to jump on the waiver claims later in the year, or when rosters are set in October, or in season actually pull the trigger on significant trades. So what they've got here on July 1st is the starting point. It's not a finished product, and ultimately, look, they won 50 games and 109 points and won the Pacific Division, had home ice. How did that work out for them? It's not so much about, they don't need to repeat that. I think they're going to be tough in the Pacific Division again, but the priorities now are making sure that you're playing your best hockey, that your key guys are healthy and ready to produce come playoff time, that they learn from the 13 games that they played and hopefully get a chance to play more than that next spring and for a couple of springs to come. So, 50 wins was fun. It was great to be around. It got the fan base re-engaged in this market. There's no question about it. But look, if they're a 103-point team or a 98-point team, as long as they make the playoffs, you saw that home ice really through the playoffs, right? Not just the Canucks, but through the playoffs, home ice didn't mean as much as it has in years gone by. It's far more about, I think, peaking at the right time and just being ready to battle and making sure that your best players show up and are there to produce on a nightly basis come playoff time.
You touched on it there, Jeff. Everybody in the YouTube live chat, while we're talking about the forward group, pointing out the defense probably didn't get much better. Nikita Zadorov walks, so does Elias Lindholm, and we've got some other stuff, some other departures that we'll get to in a sec. But just quickly looking at the YouTube live chat, 7th Street Dream, I really don't see how the Canucks get out of the ozone when Quinn and Hronek are off the ice. Adam Voth, the defense is much worse. Looking around the league, we'll just look around the league. We can talk about departing Canucks. Let's get to the first two. Nikita Zadorov goes to Boston with Elias Lindholm. Lindholm gets 7 years, 7.75. Zadorov gets 6 years at $5 million. I also saw Oliver Ekman-Larsson's got himself a brand new deal in Toronto as well. So, Jeff, when you look at free agency as a whole and what Zadorov signed for, what OEL signed for, Pesci, these other guys around the league, like, what did you make of the Canucks' work at addressing the blue line, and what would you have liked to see them do differently?
I'll admit that I thought Brendan Dillon would have been a nice replacement, sort of Zadorov light, but again, he was going to have options, and he found a home. So the Canucks moved on from there. I'll say this much, Dave. Like, I guess I fully expected that Elias Lindholm, he had been linked to Boston. The number kind of was always out there. So there really wasn't that much of a surprise with Lindholm. I woke up this morning thinking, like, all right, we're going to find out today, like the great reveal. What's Zadorov going to get? And I was prepared to be blown away and thought, okay, that's why the Canucks couldn't go there. When I saw $5 million over 6, like, maybe the Canucks weren't there at 30 million, but I have to think that they weren't that far off. And, some of that's on Zadorov. He had to decide whether it was, on him to chase every dollar available, or if there were family considerations and he wanted to stay here, whatever. He made his decision. But I have to say that the number was significant. I thought there was going to be a team out there that went nuts with Nikita Zadorov. He's picked a good spot. I mean, they'll love him in Boston, the way that he plays, a great sport market. And I think he can come pretty close to living up to that contract. Again, you pay a premium for what he brings in the playoffs. Throughout the regular season, sure, you like his size, but there are a lot of nights over 82 games where you just don't need a guy to do a lot of the things that he does. But playoff time, you saw the value of Nikita Zadorov. Well, the Bruins are a perennial playoff team, so I think he'll get lots of opportunities to compete and show off his skill set in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I think Boston's a great home for him. It's just that number surprised me. It wasn't as wild as I guess I anticipated it was going to be.
I did an article over at CanucksArmy.com predicting what each Canucks free agent would sign for. I think I was bang on all of them. Like, I even had Sam Lafferty at a 2x2, and people were calling me crazy. I had that in the back pocket. I picked the wrong team, but I had it. I got Lindholm right, with literally picked him in Boston, and I think I got the AAV and everything right on that one as well. But with Zadorov, I'm in the same boat, Jeff. I had him at a 6x6. Like, I thought some team was really going to overpay, and it was going to be crystal clear that, yeah, okay, of course, the Canucks couldn't go there. They did go somewhere else, to Edmonton, to find Vincent Desharnais. They bring him in. Harman gave some analysis on him earlier. Maybe not the best reputation, but had a really strong regular season, cleaned up some areas of his game. I was texting with our pal Bag Milk over at Oilers Nation about what he brings to the team, what Vincent Desharnais brings to the team. And the thing he said is, you're going to love the physicality, you're going to love the penalty killing, you're going to hate the grenades up the middle of the ice. And for a guy like that, where we're talking about Derek Forbort as well, being another one of those guys that's a really solid penalty killer, really solid defensive profile, you've got to move the puck up the ice. And that's where I'm starting to worry when I think about a third pair of Forbort and Desharnais.
Well, I mean, I hope Rick Tocchet watches Canucks Conversation, but I hope he wasn't listening to that little bit there, because he would shudder at the idea of pucks up in the middle of the ice and grenades, as you called them there. I mean, that's his system, is trying to eliminate all of that kind of stuff. And that is my concern. That one surprised me. Like, I thought they were done for the day when noon came, and thought maybe there'd be some fringe signings in the 24 or 48 hours to follow. But to actually go out and commit time, term, and money to another giant. Like, I mean, I get that Rick Tocchet likes his big defenseman, but at some point it's kind of like, all right, there are other ways to play the position. And all along, I've felt pretty strongly that when you had Soucy and Myers, and then you go out and get Forbort, I thought having another puck-moving type, obviously you're not going to replicate Quinn Hughes, but in the event that Quinn Hughes misses some time, and people don't want to hear that, but Hronek injuries do happen, it would, to me, to make sense to have somebody that profiles that way just a little bit somewhere in your system that could slide in, and you're never going to replace Quinn Hughes. I get that. But if Quinn Hughes was to go out for a handful of games and you're replacing him with another 6'7", like, you've got enough of those guys. So a little surprised. And the other part there is like Tom Willander is coming, like not this season, but you committed term to both Tyler Myers and now Vinny Desharnais that extend. One's a 2-year deal and one's a 3-year deal. Like there's every chance that Willander could leave college and turn pro for next season. You don't want to create roadblocks for, the few prized prospects that you've got in the organization. So that one kind of jumped out at me as well. Just a little bit surprised how much term they've committed to basically the same guy at 6'7" and 6'8" on that right side of the defense.
I was thinking about the Willander aspect too, and I was trying to make sense of it. And I think you just said it best, Jeff. You don't want to create roadblocks for one of your top prospects. So, again, it's July 1st. We're not going to get into a long Tom Willander conversation and how this affects Tom Willander. It was just something I thought of, and it's curious that you brought it up as well, because it was one of the first things that I thought of. I ask you this, Jeff. Do you think the Canucks are done in free agency when it comes to addressing their defense? We see Blankenberg's out there, Boqvist, Shillington. These are just some names that are still on the market. Adam Voth threw those in the YouTube live chat.
Yeah, and I asked Patrick Alvin basically that he showed last year that they got some work done on July the 1st. They got Teddy Bluger and they got Ian Cole. But they also did good work later in the summer, and Pia Suter was a month beyond free agency. And then on the eve of training camp, they made the trade for Casey DeSmith. They brought in Sam Lafferty as well. I think these guys recognize that there are signposts throughout the year where there are some pressure points and players shake free. I think every team will regroup after today and figure out, did they get what they need? If not, how can they go about that? And maybe trade talks are spurred from something like that. So do I think they're done? No, I mean, they're never done. It's always a work in progress, obviously, in roster building and those types of things. But I get the sense that in that management office, wherever they are, I'm here on the second floor at the Rogers Arena, wherever they are, I would have to think that they recognize that there are legitimate concerns there about that defense core. And so, yeah, one of those players that you mentioned, if you could get them on a short-term, low-money deal, understanding for a few of those guys, it's the element of bounce back or prove it or whatever, find a motivated guy that wants an opportunity. My sense is that they will still tinker here and perhaps add. I don't expect any massive moves like Marty Nakash is still out there and available. And I just don't think the Canucks have the draft capital or the trade capital necessarily to complete that kind of deal. Plus, what he would command, it's not just about acquiring him. I mean, guy needs a big money contract, and the Canucks are up against it now. So, I don't see that as a route, but a fairly inexpensive, low risk, maybe upside reward kind of addition on the back end. I could see something like that happening.
Okay, this on the topic of the defense. The idea, and again, we just touched on it a little bit there as well. The idea that the defense core at the start of the year isn't what it was at the end of the season, and we're comparing it to what it was at the end of the season. These guys are going to come around potentially, where in season you go out and make that acquisition. So I'm just throwing it out there because people in the chat are talking about it, that we're not being overly negative or anything like that. There's still chances that this team moves their defense around a little bit. It's just that right now, with the way it's currently constructed, I'd just be surprised if they find a ton of success with the way it currently is constructed. That's all. And I think they're going to maybe have to make some changes. But let's get some other stuff from the YouTube live chat. This is a question from Jay Halls. Where are we at with Artur Shilovs? They sign the goalie today. I don't know why I keep forgetting his name. Yuri Patera. Is that his name? Yes.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yuri Patera. They signed him today. And I was talking about this with Cody, Jeff. It isn't an NHL backup. Like, it isn't a proven guy that has to play in the NHL or he's not going to sign with your team. But it is a guy who's really intriguing at 25 years old, put up interesting numbers down in the AHL, played in a really bad environment down with the Henderson Silver Knights. Hasn't really gotten an NHL shot to this point, but somebody that I think at the very least is going to push Artur Shilovs for that NHL backup job.
Yeah, look, I'm no goalie expert, but I just don't for a second think that the Vancouver Canucks enter into any agreement with a goaltender without Ian Clark's approval. And Ian Clark, just an undisputed track record, right? If Ian Clark feels that that's a guy that they want in the organization, then you can understand that he deserves every benefit of the doubt and will probably be proven right. So the Canucks are in pretty good hands with Ian Clark in terms of his evaluation and his judgment on bringing goaltenders in. And for Artur Silovs, probably a little bit of a relief in as much as, before the weekend, talk about revisiting Casey DeSmith, and if not him, would they go for, a legitimate National Hockey League backup? I think this paves the way now for Artur Silovs to start the season as the backup here. But Alvin again mentioned that he's waiver exempt, and that's not insignificant that you could have him play the bulk of the games in Abbotsford, but he's at a point in his career now where you could shuttle him in. And Alvin also mentioned that they'd like to use Abbotsford and call-ups more than they have in the past, but they've been so tight against the cap that they just haven't had the flexibility. So one of the things that he talked about was getting out of LTIR so that they had a little bit more flexibility to do some of those things. We've seen this. Carolina's the example of basically having 3 goaltenders, but really liking the guy that has shuttled, more than your backup, but it's because he's waiver exempt and you can bring guys in and out and get him NHL games. So I think that, that's a possible path, but I don't think that's the path if Patera is here. If Jari Patera is the backup, I think something has gone a little bit sideways for Artur Silovs. Just as I sit here now on July the 1st, I fully anticipate that Silovs is going to have a good summer. He's going to build off what he did in the playoffs. And look, the other thing too is, again, the Canucks showed last year, 50 wins was great, 109 points. It was a lot of fun, but ultimately they needed Thatcher Demko in the playoffs and he wasn't available to them. I think they really have to monitor his workload. And I'd like to live in a world where they cap it at 50 starts and give Artur Silovs 32, somewhere along the line, give him 32 games so that it's not once every 2 weeks that he's playing and he's playing regularly. Thatcher Demko doesn't have to prove anything else in terms of his on-ice performance. What he has to prove is his durability and that he's going to be available to the Vancouver Canucks if they have another season like last year where they get on a run and look like a team that can make some noise in the playoffs. And it's a new year, and so it's another test for Demko. But that's really the one thing that Thatcher Demko hasn't done in his NHL career is stay healthy as a number 1 starter and be ready to go night in, night out come playoff time. And it's unfortunate for him. Obviously battled super hard to get back from that first injury in March and played the final 2 regular season games and, won in the playoffs and then was done. Had to be crushing for him. He talked about it after the season. It was maybe the hardest thing that he's been through as a professional athlete. So I think the team has to be mindful of the workload on Thatcher Demko. And they also have to find out now. Artur Silovs has shown in spurts like this guy can play. He looks the part of an NHL goaltender, but Demko's got 2 years left on his contract. They're going to have to make a really difficult decision, not now, but they need to find out, can Artur Silovs, is he the next one in waiting? Is he already here in the system? Let him play and play a fair bit and find out some of those things so that you can make an informed decision as an organization on the future of Thatcher Demko when you get to that decision.
Any takeaways for you, Jeff, from Patrick Alvin's media avail? I was going to bring up the thing he said about Demko. He said Demko is going to be fine. He said he didn't need any surgery to this point. Take that, do with that.
I hope he doesn't need any from this point moving forward. That was a bit of a, it was a bit of a curious answer, but I think it was sort of roundabout saying that no, he didn't need any postseason surgical procedures, and let's hope for his sake that he doesn't need any from this point moving forward. No, otherwise, I think most GMs want to believe that they accomplished something on July 1st, and I believe that the Canucks did that. I think Alvin recognized that. It is a crazy environment and you're trying to monitor what's going on around you, but in the same time, you're operating in a vacuum and just trying to make your team better. I like the fact that, and I tweeted this out, a lot of teams get older on July, right? I mean, just the nature of the day. Most UFAs are older players and you're locking them up. I mean, for the Canucks to get 3 forwards that are all in their 20s, JT Miller remains their oldest forward and he just turned 31. This isn't an old team. They've done a pretty nice job in reshaping that group. Ian Cole is gone. Tyler Myers is the old man on the roster, and Forbort comes in at 32. So you got a couple of defensemen that have some age, but otherwise, again, if you're going to place bets on players, why not try to do it closest to their statistical prime? And with Jake Debrusk at 27 and Kiefer Sherwood and Danton Heinen in their late 20s, I think there's every reason to believe that these guys can give you serviceable or more than serviceable years over the duration of these contracts.
Jeff, great stuff. Thank you so much for joining me. You were here for a whole 30 minutes. We really appreciate it. And folks, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit like. Jeff is a regular contributor to our show. You can find him as well on Rink Wide Vancouver. But we're going to sign off for now. So for my co-host, Jeff Patterson, and our technical producer, Jacob Lazar, my name is David Quadrelli. Thank you so much for watching the free agency edition of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.